now reacting to the indictment coming out of Georgia against former President Trump. And to discuss the nature of this particular case, we have William Jacobson, law professor at Cornell Law School. William Jacobson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course, William, I'd like to get your thoughts. What do you make of this latest indictment of the former president? 41 counts, 18 other co-defendants, this one even invoking the RICO Act, which is usually reserved for mob bosses.
Well, I think it's an attempt by Georgia to do a shock and awe sort of attack on Donald Trump and his supporters, that they've thrown in so much with so many people. They mention up to 30 potentially other people who are unindicted co-conspirators. So it's throwing everything at him and really replicating what the federal government is already doing in the District of Columbia. So it appears to be a very political action by the prosecutor in Georgia.
This case does seem to be a bit different from the others in the sense that it appears as though there's going to be a mugshot. It's certainly on the table as of now, as well as, from what I understand, cameras being permitted in the courtroom. How does this change the dynamic in terms of optics?
Well, I think it changes it a lot. You could see it yesterday when the prosecutor gave her smirking statement that they're going to play this up. I think the prosecution wants, a pound of flesh from Donald Trump. They want the mugshot. They want him paraded in front of the cameras. So I think that they could have done this a different way. Like in Manhattan, they didn't do that. Manhattan indictment. They haven't done that in the federal indictments. So I think this all smells very political from the way the prosecution is conducting itself.
It's no secret that media can concoct narratives, omit context, twist things in very believable ways. But when this type of activity evolves into the justice system where people's livelihoods are at stake, where are we as a nation? Because it ultimately boils down to whose propaganda is better to a certain extent, in a way.
Well, I think one of the big concerns that people have is that this is the weaponization of the prosecutorial function for political purposes. And what's most outrageous is many outrageous things that have happened. I don't agree with Donald Trump's conduct after the election, but I also don't think it was criminal. But now they waited to bring these charges until we're in an election year. And that's the problem. These charges are based on conduct that took place almost 3 years ago. They could have brought this case a year ago. We would have had the trial, we would have had the result, and it wouldn't have interfered with the Republican primaries and the general election. That's another thing that makes this smell very political.
Are you sensing any potential loopholes in any of these cases, specifically this Georgia one? Is there a jurisdiction issue? Could there be a chance that it gets tossed out?
Well, I don't think so. I think that, Georgia is entitled to bring charges based on its state RICO statute. I think it will be scrutinized by a judge. I'm not sure they've alleged the elements of it, but Georgia and the feds can move at the same time for the same conduct. We've seen that in many criminal prosecutions in the past. So I don't think this is going to go away. Pieces of it might, but I think this is a case that's probably going to have to go to trial.
And lastly, where does the Supreme Court stand in all of this, and do they have any say?
It's highly unlikely that the Supreme Court would get involved prior to the conclusion of the trial. The Supreme Court doesn't normally micromanage cases as they're proceeding through trial. I think you do have an issue here, which is that you have local prosecutors and the federal government bringing charges that are going to interfere with a federal election. I don't know if that will move an appeals court or the justices to take action. I don't think so. But this is a highly unusual circumstance. This has never happened before, that they are going to tie up the most likely nominee of a major political party in an election year. And I think that's something the Supreme Court's going to have to think about. I'm not expecting them to do anything, but this is a once in a lifetime, really once in our nation's lifetime sort of circumstance where the prosecutions have been so weaponized during a political year to tie the hands of a political candidate.
William Jacobson, really appreciate your insights. Thank you.